all local government chairmen, and the entire PDP executive in the state at a high-level stakeholders meeting held at the government house in Asaba. The governor cited the PDP's unresolved internal crisis as the reason behind the mass exodus. Ekedamechi has the details.
It began as whisper in political circle. Rumors spread about Governor Oborowori's plans. For weeks, he dismissed the speculations. But now, the whispers have become headlines. After a closed-door meeting with top political figures in Delta State, Governor Oborowori has made his move. He has joined the ruling All Progressives Congress. Briefing journalists after the meeting were the pioneer chairman of the PDP in Delta State and five-time Senator James Manager, along with the Commissioner for Works, Rural Roads and Public Information.
We needed to take a decision that will further help to cement the development in our state, to build the bond of love that have existed in our state, to further advance the cause of security and the welfare of our people, and to a very large extent ensure that development in Delta, because every politics is local, is not truncated. And in taking that decision, we came to the inevitable conclusion that moving out of the PDP is very, very necessary for us to be able to collaborate with our kith and kin and build that state that every Delta will be proud of.
So the PDP has never gotten this kind of trouble before. PDP is in trouble, truly. I don't think it is good enough for the PDP family in Delta to continue to be inside that boat. That is what we have resolved. That is what we have decided.
Those present at the landmark meeting included Deputy Governor Monday Oyeme, former Governor Ifeanyi Okowa, the Speaker of the House of Assembly, the PDP State Chairman, and all local government chairmen. Later in the day, Governor Oborowori met with all 25 local government chairmen, again behind closed doors. He declined to speak to the press, but passed along the message clearly: the move is happening. Plans are already underway for a grand rally where Governor Oborowori will officially be received into the APC fold. Top party leaders, including the Vice President, are expected to be in attendance. The mass defection represents a significant boost for the APC as it gears up for the 2027 general elections. But with so many political bigwigs now converging under one umbrella, analysts warn that managing the new dynamics could be just as challenging as the campaigns ahead. Ikenna Amechi, TVC News, Asaba.
Interesting days ahead, but let's talk security matters, where President Bola Tinubu has met with the National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu, and the Chief of Defense Staff, General Chris Musa, at the State House in Abuja. The meeting, which was held at the official residence of the President inside the State House, is coming at a time when the security situation in parts of the country have continued to worsen. It is not unusual for the President to receive security briefings from top defense officials, but this particular meeting is considered significant because of recent renewed violence in the country's north-central region. More than 200 people have been killed in the past 3 weeks in attacks on communities in Plateau and Benue states. The identities of the assailants remain unclear, but Benue State Governor Haise Talia has blamed the violence on those he describes as foreigners, claiming the attackers do not speak the local language in the affected areas. And to Sokoto State, where the managing director of the Sokoto Rima River Basin Development Authority has appealed for calm following a public outcry by rice farmers over the recent shortage of water that has affected their farming activities. Rice farmers in Sokoto, Kebbi and Zamfara states largely depend on the inflow of Rima River water for their irrigation activities, and presently they are experiencing shortage of water. The managing director, in response to the public outcry, visited some irrigation schemes within the Middle Rima River Valley, where thousands of bags of rice are produced yearly by hundreds of young farmers, where he assured the farmers of government's efforts towards managing the situation.
The problem we face and what prompted me out today is as a result of the complaint we receive from farmers in this part of the country that they have shortage of water. I invited my professional staff yesterday. They briefed me on what is on ground there at Goronyo, and they just decided the best is let us come and see what is on ground here. So we are here today to see things for ourselves, at some time to see what we can do to avoid future occurrence of this.
I've seen the reality whereby the low level of the water has shrinks, leading to the devastating loss of 1,000 tons of paddy rice. So I take the pen and write an appeal report, news item, and send it to my platform, requesting the seeking appeal from the state government and as well the leading authority to come into the aid of these farmers.
This is a great development in terms of rice production, dry rice production in our area, because you cannot produce rice without water. And unfortunately for us here, we have a crisis of this shortage of water. Eventually, this shortage of water was as a result of water shortage from the Goronyo Dam, in which if there's no that water, definitely the rice that we have planted will never survive well.
That water is entering the dam, and we are storing it for the benefit of the people during dry season.
Let's go on a short break, and when we return, it will be time to begin tonight's conversation. Stay with us, everyone.
I'm Nifemi Oguntoye, news anchor with TVC News. My day is usually busy, and it's difficult keeping up with breaking news stories, trending stories, business news, stock exchange, and what have you. But with TVC News on WhatsApp, I'm able to catch up with all the breaking news, real-time updates, and trending stories on the go, right on my phone, no matter where I am. It's quick, easy, and always on. And here you can join us by scanning the QR code or using the link on our X and Instagram. Why wait? Come to the side of news that keeps you ahead. TVC News, first with breaking news. The Inspector General of Police has met with senior officers to review the state of security.
We are continuing our coverage of the arrest of Godwin Emefiele.
The Senate has summoned the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria to properly brief the Senate regarding the state of the economy.
What I will never take is threat.
Let's now bring you more developments from Ibadan, the Oyo State capital, where an explosion has taken place. Tell us about this incident.
TVC News, first with breaking news.
Welcome back, everyone. Amid the rising spate of killings in Plateau and Benue states, former Minister of Defense, Lieutenant General Theophilus Danjuma, has advised Nigerians to defend themselves. According to Danjuma, relying solely on the government for protection is no longer realistic. The retired Lieutenant General says, and I quote, "The warning I gave some years ago is still as valid today as it was then. Nigerians must rise and defend themselves," end of quote. Danjuma also said that people cannot continue to sit and watch while bandits, terrorists, and criminal gangs massacre people unchecked, stressing that the time had come for communities to take proactive steps in protecting their lives and properties. Joining me tonight to speak on the importance of this is the Managing Director, Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited, Dr. Kabir Adamu. Good evening, Mr. Adamu. Thank you very much for joining us on Politics Tonight. Can you hear me, Dr. Adamu?
Yeah, I can hear you. My
right.
pleasure, okay.
Right.
I'm delighted to be back here again.
Right. Thank you for always finding time to join us. You know, it gets worrisome by the day, doesn't it? I mean, CY Danjuma is not the first Nigerian to have made this profound statement. I remember that as far back as 2020, former Governor Saba Otom of Benue State called on the Buhari administration to allow citizens to bear arms to protect themselves against rising insecurity in the country. A year after 2021, former Governor of Katsina State, Aminu Masari, called on residents of the state to arm themselves and confront bandits because security officials alone cannot tackle insecurity. In 2021, his predecessor, current governor of the state, Diko Rada, says if bandits could buy guns freely, civilians should be allowed to bear arms. And just recently, precisely in March, Plateau State Governor Clep Malfang says he believes every community must defend itself in response to this mass killings in the state. So clearly, T.Y. Danjuma's statement is not new. But my question to you is, has Nigeria's level of insecurity reached a point where citizens should resort to self-defense?
So the question is a very complex one, and it requires, I would say, some deconstructing. First off, yes, citizens have a right to defend themselves. It is only logical that if someone is being killed, then that person should defend themselves. Last time you and I spoke, we documented the number of persons who have been killed from January to the end of March 2025, and that's over 3,000 Nigerians, about 3,600 Nigerians thereabout. Within the month of April, we're yet to completely document it, but the figures is near almost 1,000 at the moment. So yes, all of these persons have a right to defend themselves. But there is a challenge, and the challenge is where we live in an organized community to the extent where the responsibility for protecting us lies on the government. So anyone who invariably calls for citizens or communities to defend themselves is also inadvertently and invariably saying that the government has failed in that responsibility to protect ourselves. And I don't think it will augur well for the future of our country if the common narrative is every community should defend itself. Because what it means is that, first off, we're legitimizing vigilantalism, we're legitimizing the militarization of our communities, and we're reducing the effect of the institution of the state. And that by doing that, we're returning to that Hobbesian state of existence where only the powerful will kind of get it with. And then if you add to the fact that the types of conflict that we have in most parts of Nigeria is an identity-based conflict. You have the we and the them group in most parts of Nigeria. So what it means is that the we will defend itself against the them. And then the other them, which would also now be we, would defend itself against the other side. So you just have a situation of reprisals upon reprisals until a point where there is a balance of terror. And then when that balance of terror exists, then you have some semblance of calm until another cycle of killings start repeating itself. So I am not supportive of this call, and I think it's quite unfortunate that it's coming from persons who should know better and who perhaps in the past had a role to play in national security, in national defense, and then now in the twilight of their life, they are making these calls. So I would be of the view that it is wrong, and it is better to turn that call on the state to say, let the state strengthen its capacity to protect us, and that perhaps when it does that, this call for self-defense will reduce, because we still have a public security system in place. That public security system has not collapsed. So invariably saying that it has collapsed, I think is foolhardy, and it should be defended. And I'm hoping
the other question would be, Dr. Adamu, the other question would be, does the state have the capacity to protect us? Because really there's been several reactions to this latest call. And that was why I wanted to know if indeed we've gotten to that point of self-defense as a nation. Governor Namadi of Jigawa State has said resorting to self-defense will cause anarchy, just as you've pointed out. But from another angle, when people say it's high time Plateau people or Nigerians defended themselves, is this even realistic? Can we really, or can they really defend themselves against these terrorists and bandits who go about with highly sophisticated weapons? So another question I'd like to ask you, which is kind of direct, because I believe at this point we cannot continue to, polish some of these conversations any longer. Human beings are dying almost every day. Nigerians are losing their lives every day, especially at this time of the day when they're helpless. Some evil-minded individuals invade their communities and kill them. Is this an indication that the country is at war with itself?
By all definitions of warfare, we have entered a state of warfare. If on a monthly basis, 1,000 people will be killed, if you divide that 3,600 by the number of days in a month, so let's use 30, that means 90. We're arriving at least 5 persons being killed per day. And this is a very conservative estimate. As you know, there are days where up to 100 persons are killed in Nigeria. But we're using a very conservative estimate, using this 3,000 number to say that at least 5 persons are being killed. So there is no definition of war that you would use that will not enter, in the lexicon of what war means. It's only that we have not declared that war. Yes. But back to your question on why this call for self-defense, I would say, is uncharitable and it's not appropriate coming from elders at this point in time. There are other things to do, and I don't understand why we're shying away from calling on those other things. As an example, why, in the case of retired General T.Y. Danjuma, with due respect to him, why is he not calling for improved public security? Perhaps we should start from that. And there are levels of that. Remember, there is the federal government, which has all the paraphernalia of security. Then most state governments also have some level of paraphernalia of security. So why is it that we're not demanding for an improvement in security from this public security departments? Why is it that we have in our democratic system 3 levels? We have the executive arm, we have the legislative arm, we have the judiciary, and each of this can play a role in this regard. If the executive, where all of these MDAs exist, all the security exist, and they are not performing, why don't we pressure the National Assembly to take some level of action as provided for in our democratic system on the executive to ensure that the security, public security is improved? So it is until we do all of this before we reach a state. And don't forget, if in the next round of elections, security become an issue and we vote because we are not happy with the performance of this administration in security, then also that's an option. But I do not think it is fair, it is wise, and it is good for the future of this country for this call to defend themselves. It would lead us to a state of, like I said, Hobbesian existence.
Also, Dr. Adamu, is it high time Mr. President declared a state of emergency on insecurity across the country?
With all sense of responsibility, Olajumoke, Mr. President should call a simple National Security Council meeting. That is what our Constitution provides for. Our Constitution provides for the National Security Council to discuss public security. Now, the advantage of calling for the National Security Council meeting is that it has its administrative organs. Decisions that are taken within the National Security Council, once they are gazetted, they almost have the force of law. And it means any erring official who does not abide by those provisions can actually be penalized. And in fact, in certain instances can be tried. So if the president issues a directive and that directive is taken by the administrative team that runs that council and they turn it into key instruments, tools for the performance of this security organization, they can now use it to measure their activities. So let's start from that. I am not supportive of a declaration of a state of emergency. Let's start from a National Security Council meeting where this matter will be discussed appropriately. Of course, the president has the right to call anyone he wishes. That's what the Constitution says. Apart from the members as provided for in the Constitution, he can call anyone to come and brief him on this issue. And I think it's high time that the private sector is also invited to share ideas and views. Let's not forget that the private sector is even more than the public sector in security. At the last time we counted, there are up to about 3 million employees of the private sector security in Nigeria. The public security is just 1 million. So this is the time perhaps take advantage of that. The third level is retired security personnel that are also willing and happy to contribute to that. So before a declaration of state of emergency, I think we can do all of this. The other element, which is absolutely important, is the president should engage the governors. The other day on your platform, on your station, one of your colleagues was discussing with one of the presidential advisors on media, and he more or less blamed the governors. So I think instead of a public blaming, why don't the president invite the governors, and then together as a group, they can take key decisions on how to address this monster. All of the drivers and triggers of insecurity exist at the subnational level. Very few of them exist at the federal level. So the role of the governors, and to an extent, the role of the chairman of local government is also absolutely important. So I believe that the president can do all of this before we start discussing state of emergency.
So I wanted to focus on Benue and Plateau for the next few minutes because, we've seen dastardly and callous killings in Benue State. Same pattern of attacks on the Plateau. While armed herders are on the rampage in one part of the state, local bandits are unleashing terror in another part of the state. Are you pleased with the way the governors are handling this matter?
I believe they can do better, and I honestly would sometimes a little bit uncomfortable when we narrow the discussion to Benue and Plateau. Like we discussed the last time. So
that's just for the next few minutes. I'm sure we're going to expatiate later on, but for now, Benue and Plateau.
Okay, so I believe the governors can do better. In terms of the arrangement that they have in place for addressing security in their states. Security has about 6 layers, and each of these layers, there are systems, that are in place to support each of these layers. And based on my understanding, and believe me, I know each of these states very well. I've visited them, I've discussed with their commissioners or special advisors on security, so I do know what they have in place. It can be improved upon. I always like referring to what is in existence in Lagos. None of these states has near what Lagos has in terms of the state level infrastructure. As an example, Lagos was very insightful to create a security trust fund. And the manner that trust fund is being managed is transparent. It's managed like a private, run institution with all the necessary rudiments for managing a business. So none of the states has something similar to that. Number 2, a command and control center where you can record incidents, where you can coordinate response to incidents. None of the state has something as effective as what Lagos has. Number 3, the state level arrangements such as the Lagos Neighborhood Watch that we have. Now, even though in most of the states they have vigilantes, but the structure and the management of these vigilantes is nothing compared to what the Neighborhood Watch is in Lagos in terms of their equipment, in terms of the training they have, in terms of the support they are getting from the state and the community. None of that, and a few other things that they could do better. So having structures at the granular level, Plateau State and Benue State have topographies that are very difficult to meander. So what are they waiting for in terms of making sure that the appropriate equipment for surveillance in particular in those locations are in existence? Then the other component is also the kind of relationships they have with neighboring states. In the case of Benue, it does have a border with an international country, which is Cameroon. And from what we're hearing, a significant number of the attackers may actually be coming in through that border area. So what are we waiting for? At what point is the governor going to either engage with the federal government or reach a handshake to the regional governor in the other country, just like Borno State has done through multilateral platforms? I don't think the governor should wait. He needs to do that so that there is some level of cooperation and intelligence sharing, as well as pressure on the federal government to ensure that there are military operations are along that borderline. So in summary, I think the state governors can do better in the security architecture. The third point, which is I think even more important than the 2 other points I've mentioned, is the type of governance that they have in place. Is that governance, does it promote inclusivity? Does it promote managing resources in an equitable manner? And does it also promote dispute resolution and peace, keeping processes within the state? Or is it a divisive one that encourages the type of conflict that we're seeing at the moment? I think there is room for improvement in that regard, especially, and I want to emphasize this, in land governance. Land governance in both states is at the center of some of the conflicts that you have in those locations. So where they're not able to have a land governance policy that is effective, I usually talk about titling of the land. They should, as far as I'm concerned, as to tomorrow, ensure that they title all the land using technology and monitor, what kind of activities take place within their land. And then the last point is the judicial systems in place. Most of the conflict we're seeing is because the judicial system is failing to arrest offenders and punish those offenders. So what are they doing at their subnational level to improve the administration of justice so that offenders are arrested and they are penalized? As long as they don't do all of these things, then sadly, I would say there is room for improvement in the way they are managing both security at the subnational level.
And interestingly, Dr. Adamo, you've always made reference to Lagos State, and you thought that by now some of these governors should have taken a cue from the operations of Lagos State, especially Neighborhood Watch. But the big question, just like you've asked, is what are they waiting for? For Benue State, for instance, I've had a conversation with the media aide to the former governor, Samuel Autumn. Before then, I had a conversation with the CPS to the current governor, Tesukula. Despite both leaders trying to politicize the situation in Benue State, they agreed on a particular thing, which is that no community in Benue State is killing another community. What both men have agreed on is that there is nothing like farmer-herder clash in Benue State. They say this is invasion, attacks and killings of Benue State. Do you think the issue of insecurity in Benue State is being taken for granted?
No, I don't think so. I know that everyone is worried. The governor, in fact, being a clergyman, I'm sure he's extremely disturbed. Most times, clergymen are more sympathetic, more empathetic than us, the average person. So I know he's extremely worried, and I would not say he's taking it for granted. But then the challenge that I've seen, and it's difficult for me to say this without being too critical, is that public security is taken for granted. Public security is it's a systematic process. You may be very good in what you do, but if you don't understand public security, then you would fail. And I think this is one of the challenges I've seen in both states. I mentioned to you that they've appointed special advisors on security. In the case of Benue State, he actually has different levels. He has, I think, about two. One that relates with the federal security agencies, and then the other one that handles internal security. But then how has he authorized those persons that he has appointed in terms of funding, in terms of the offices that they have, and the kind of equipment they have in those offices? So that's part of the challenge. I think I am hoping that we would see better in terms of the type of persons that are appointed, in terms of the authorization. No matter how good someone is, if you appoint that person and you don't give him the necessary authority to handle the offices that you've appointed him in, then he's not able to perform. And of course, you have to also give him the necessary financial support to allow him to do all the things that he wants to do. Public security, like I said, has 6 layers. And if we do not have effective components of each of these 6 layers. If you just have one and think you've done it, it's tantamount to someone just installing CCTV in a town and then concluding that he has effective physical security. No, all of these 6 components will have to be in place within the public security system if we are going to see effectiveness. Just to give you an example and to buttress the point I'm making, in each of the local governments, I want a situation where the governors should simulate an attack in that local government and then see how long it takes the public security agencies to respond to that attack. Again, I said simulate. Don't wait until the attack happens. Now, if it takes, say, 1 day before response, you failed. In normal security parlance practices, it is 7 minutes. Anything above 7 to 15 minutes, it's not good enough. So the governors should make sure they have systems in place where response capabilities are delivered in nothing above 15 minutes. And like I said, they should simulate those type of attacks and see what. Don't wait until it happens and then you start running around and complaining that you have this challenge and all of that. Make it forward looking. Make it a very functional one. And like I said, keep on doing drills and exercises and see where the mistakes are. Don't wait until the enemy
to attack. All right, Dr. Adamo, let's go on a break, and when we come back, we'll dig deep. Thank you.
Every major news story is with many perspectives and layered with different levels of impact.
Hello. what time did this happen? We will be right there.
At TVC News, we follow the big and major news, gathering the facts, witnessing the outcome.
I am here live at the aftermath of the approval of the new national minimum wage.
We are TV station of the year, not just for breaking news, but for being first, fair and accurate. TVC News, first with breaking news.
I'm Miriam Lunge. I'm a passionate environment advocate and a published author.
I am the founder of Celebration, a businesswoman, and a fashion icon.
I am a wealth coach and a real estate developer.
I am Amako Arakwe. I'm a corporate commercial lawyer and an entrepreneur.
Barkamu da warhaka. I am Ramatu Shehu Oyibo, an entrepreneur and a business coach.
I am the voice of an average Muslim woman, an hijabite, and a lawyer.
I am a polymath and a serial entrepreneur.
I am Murayo Afolabi Brown, Managing Director, TVC Entertainment. I'm a media consultant, producer, and broadcaster.
The ladies of Your View are made of women from different professions, tribes, cultures, and religion. Join us every Monday to Friday as we share our views on topical and social issues.
Welcome back to Politics Tonight, everyone. Thank you very much for staying with us. Tonight, we're focused on Benue Plateau killings as TY Danjuma tells Nigerians, defend yourselves against bandits. My guest tonight is Kabiru Adamu, Managing Director, Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited. Dr. Kabiru, thank you so much for staying with us on the program. I'm sure you know, you're aware that the president recently says is committed to keeping the country safe. He says he's committed to restoring peace and security. Do you advise that we expedite action on state police?
So yes, I advocate for the decentralization of policing, but whether that is state policing or some other decoupling of the Nigerian police force at the moment is something that we should tread carefully. The democratic culture at the state level, at the subnational level, is very weak. Okay. You have more or less emperors who are ruling the states. They decide virtually on everything. So if we further empower them by handing over a policing system to them, I think the consequences...
All right, Dr. Adamu. So if it is not state police, what other options do we have?
Oh, we do have an option. Olajumoke, we have a community policing policy that has already been approved and that the former president Buhari has already signed into it. And that is what we have at the moment, but we are not implementing it fully. The community policing policy has two major components to it. Number one is the community policing committees that are supposed to be established in each of the wards in this country. And in most of the wards, they've been established. Now, the beauty of the community policing committees is that they will have representatives from each stakeholder within the community. Women groups, market groups, youth groups, farmers, name them, whoever it is, as long as you are recognized within that community, you would have representation in that committee. So that means you'll be coming, and remember that the meetings would be in a place where the police would also be present. So during those meetings, the idea of those committees is that they will be able to identify the things that are disturbing them within that community. And because the police is present, they will take decisions together with the police on how to address those issues. So I would say it's a beautiful place to start. Why we are not implementing it, I honestly don't know. And the Inspector General of Police does not need any approval to make those committees effective. Because like I said, the policy is already in place. There is no approval that is being awaited from anyone. The second aspect of this community policing policy is the police constabularies that were supposed to be recruited. And as far as I know, they have been recruited across the country. But then there was a challenge at the point. Of course, politicians felt that this was employment for their cronies. And so a lot of them secured these constabulary positions for their cronies, but then they realized at a point that there was no budgetary provision for payment. The whole idea of the constabularies was that we're not going to pay them with public funds. The idea is if the community wants, the community can put together some small money and then they can use it to support the activities of this constabulary. Sadly, that has not happened up to now. So again, the Inspector General of Police does not need anybody's approval to make this policy work. If he wants to, it's just for him to go out. So I think, why don't we start with that? Why don't we, until the National Assembly decides, or the National Economic Council, as it were, which is a bit odd, that is the National Economic Council that is discussing state policing, until whichever arm of government is responsible decides on the direction, why don't we go with what we have in place at the moment, so that we at least secure our communities better.
What exactly would you say is the situation with Plateau State? The December 2023 massacre is still fresh in our memories. And according to the governor, he recently says, since the return to democratic rule in 1999, Plateau has remained under relentless attacks by bandits and terrorists. And on this program, you and your colleagues have established that there is a possibility that there are terrorist enclaves within these communities that perhaps the state government isn't aware of or difficult to locate. And the governor has also said these criminal groups have now seized control of nearly all the state forests, game reserves and grazing areas. My focus is on the establishment of the Forest Ranger Force, which is in line with the president's desire to enhance forest guards, equipped with modern technology and weapons to bolster security measures. How far do you think the federal government should have gone towards actualizing this initiative?
I think it should have been one of the first things that this administration would do. If you look at the Renewed Hope agenda, there are several policy initiatives that are contained in that document, which is practically a mandate now, because, I mean, we've voted in the president, and so his agenda has now become a mandate. So I believe that the Forest Guard initiative should have been implemented. I remember last year, or even in 2023, the president did meet with the governors, and the outcome of that meeting was a directive for the governors to start implementing that policy, as it were, of forest guard. So I don't know what happened, why we're yet to have that. Yet we still have ungoverned spaces across several states.
But how important is it?
It's absolutely important. One of the drivers of insecurity at the moment is the existence of this ungoverned spaces. And the irony, Olajumoke, is that most of these ungoverned spaces belong to the state governors. They have responsibility for them. So apart from a few reserves, forest reserves, that is under the control, as it were, of the federal government, almost every other land belongs to the state government, including forest. So it is the responsibility of the states, as it were. And the earlier they start certain measures, and I must say they need to think, outside the box to come up with ways to put adequate surveillance within that forest. If they are reluctant to recruit these forest rangers, forest guards, for whatever reason, then how about technology? There is enough technology today that would allow you to have surveillance within this forested and mountainous areas. But the earlier we started, the better. If what Daniel Boala said is true, that they do receive up to 300 billion naira in terms of security vote every month, then they should start thinking of technology. Again, there is enough technology that they can use to allow them to have surveillance in those ungoverned spaces. Of course, technology would also require human recruitment. So forest rangers is really the way to go, and it should have been done yesterday, not even today.
You also wonder what exactly, might be delaying all of these initiatives to come into friction. We've heard from the NSA, also from the police, the IGP has spoken and, ordered the immediate and comprehensive deployment of police tactical assets to all of these affected areas. The police IG is talking about this critical intervention with significant reinforcement. It talked about additional units of highly trained tactical personnel. There is a long list of other interventions. Is it about the numbers of deployed personnel or military equipment or strategic operations? What must change?
Accountability, Olajumoke.
On whose part?
Honestly, I wish I could say.
On whose part, Dr. Adamu?
On the part of the government, frankly. And by that, I mean accountability on the security sector.
Okay.
Let's use Plateau State as an example. There are two major operations in Plateau State. What is called Operation Safe Haven, that has been in existence for 15 years. If you have a child that is 15 years old and you don't know whether that child is effective or not, then you yourself need to question
you have
yourself.
a problem.
In other words, exactly, we need to evaluate the performance of that operation. If we're having the kind of killings that we're having in Plateau State and we have an operation that is 15 years old in that state, then something is wrong. The second operation is Operation Rainbow that was established by the state, and it has different components, policing and several other state level security operations. We also need to evaluate that. So I believe that it's all about accountability. Olajumoke, even in your space, if you have a staff that has failed, and then you have not queried that staff, or it's a repeated case of failure, and you've not fired that staff, or even redeployed that staff, or retrained that staff, or asked the staff, is it an issue of equipment or what? Then it means you yourself, you are condoning failure. And frankly, that's where I stand at the moment. You are a journalist. Correct me if I'm wrong. Have you read anywhere whether one security personnel has been held accountable or even redeployed over the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks that we've been having these incidents in Plateau and Benue State? So in simple terms, I am saying it in clear terms that it is a case of accountability. That's what needs to change. And I think the president should help us in that regard. He appointed most of the persons in this portfolio. If it's a case of misappointment in terms of their capacity, then maybe he should rejiggle them to other locations. So in clear terms, give them specific directives. And where they fail to meet those directives, perhaps change them.
Let's talk about Operation Safe Haven, because you mentioned that. Do you think the operation of Operation Safe Haven must change taxes at this point? There's a new GOC, Major General Folonsho Ilola, who has pledged to be just and impartial in addressing the security challenges in Plateau State. Is it about the operation or the leadership?
So I believe that the operation is just a small component of what is needed in Plateau State. No military operation can address an identity-based conflict. Sadly, for some reasons, the residents of Plateau State do not want to accept that what they are dealing with is an identity-based conflict. I'm not excluding the possibility that there is a criminal element that is supporting this identity-based conflict. Yes, there is, definitely. There are probably terrorists, name them whatever, that are also involved. But at the root of the crisis in Plateau State is identity-based conflict. And you don't use force to manage identity-based conflict. There are 4 things that we need to do if we're going to address this identity-based conflict. Number 1 is to enhance community policing in the manner that I explained earlier on. We need to have in each of the local governments in Plateau State a strengthened community policing component and a strengthened security architecture that allows rapid response within 7 to 15 minutes. Olajumoke, this is not rocket science. It's very simple. Number 2 is a conflict-sensitive governance that addresses land disputes, political marginalization, and resource competition. Again, it must be a local governance style. It is not the federal government, it's not the military that will do that. It is the state government that must do these 3 things that I've mentioned. You cannot have complaining every time that it's about land grabbing, and yet you do not have an effective policy for managing land issues such as land governance. Start with that. Number 3, a justice system that is fair, fast, and credible. Once you have that in place, it reduces the tendency for communities to arm themselves in order to protect or exact whatever interest that they want. And then the last one is civic education and dialogue platforms that help bridge divides and not widen them. In the case of Plateau State, they have a peace commission. But Olajumoke, find out, is that peace commission being funded adequately? Does it have the wherewithal to carry out this civic education? And at the national level, what is NOA doing? What is the Ministry of Information doing? So until we do all of this, it is then that the Operation Safe Haven can have the capacity to carry out its role. But we're expecting the expectations we have on Operation Safe Haven is unrealistic, frankly. We have to do all of this, and then, of course, they will go after the criminals and tame them. But right now, we want Operation Safe Haven to do everything when we've not improved on governance.
And Dr. Adamu, earlier I said it's important for us not to continue to polish some of these conversations any longer, because our brothers and sisters are being killed every day. And this, would take me back to the issue of accountability in the security sector. And I know what you mean is that heads must roll. And also I remember the December 2023 Christmas Eve massacre on the Plateau. CDS Christopher Musa excused the Army's lack of intelligence capability on the basis that the attackers selected remote areas difficult for the soldiers to access quickly, even when informed of ongoing attacks. Do you think that to a very large extent, this is a situation where non-state actors are challenging the supremacy of governments and doing it successfully because no one has been held accountable or no deterrents that will forcefully make them stop this act across the country?
Exactly. That's the situation we're having in the country. Non-state actors realize that the only way they can exact whatever interest that they want is to pick up weapons. And they've done that. They've tried it once, they've tried it twice, and now they've institutionalized the challenge of the instruments of force by the state. They're able to do it, and because we don't arrest and punish them, we're seeing a repetition of it over and over and over again. I mean, think about it, Olajumoke. 50 persons or 100 or 70 or whatever number would climb motorbikes, sometimes 2 on 1 motorbikes. Can you imagine the quantity of dust that would be raised by that moving motorbike? Can you imagine the noise of the revving of the engine of those motorbikes? Now they will now come to communities, attack those communities, and in most times touch those communities. So that means fire would be raised. We're not, look, it pains me to envision that situation and then to come to the conclusion that in spite of all of this, they will be able to escape and we won't be able to arrest them. We will not be able to punish them. So clearly they are challenging the supremacy of the use of force by the state, and they're doing so successfully without any consequences until we change that tide, where they realize that if they challenge that supremacy, the consequences would either be death or the consequences would be, a very long time in prison or some very, very difficult and dire consequences. It's only then that I think we would now start seeing some level of peace. But at the moment, I hate to say with all sense of responsibility that as a state, we have not succeeded in maintaining that supremacy of the use of force at the moment. It beats me. And I would say this for anyone who wants to hear. In today's world, in fact, maybe I should recommend to the Minister of Defense or to the IG of Police, he should go to the Minister of Communications and tell him to please ask the team in NIDDA or any of the agencies under Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy. They can help him through forensic investigation, identify where those motorbikes came from and where those motorbikes left to. It's not a rocket science.
Thank you for telling us that, Dr. Adamu. And still talking about accountability, we've seen several reports of northern stakeholders alleging that banditry now business venture for government officials and security agents. Is this statement a fact or a myth? Do you think this should be investigated? And juxtaposing this with Governor Mothwang saying that when the security personnel arrest some suspects, they end up being released after arrest, courtesy of some powerful persons. They end up being released back into the society. And how it also looks like the Northern elders are too quiet on this matter.
Okay, first off, let me start from the failure of the criminal justice system to arrest and punish offenders. It's not specific to banditry. It cuts across virtually all sectors of our society where offenders are committing offenses and they are not being punished through the criminal justice system. So I know the narrative is focusing on banditry, but it's not just banditry. Name them. Virtually every aspect of society in Nigeria today, you have offenders that are committing offense of various types of offenses.
So, Dr. Adamu, I specifically said that because Governor Mothwang made that statement on TVC News.
Well, I'm a bit concerned about some of the narratives that are being spewed out by our leaders. It sounds to me that our leaders need to be a little bit more open in terms of appreciating that their incidents or security challenges don't have linear explanations.
But are you saying this is not? Are you saying this is not the reality?
So in terms of banditry, it's the reality, but it's not specific to banditry. This is the point I'm saying. I mean, yeah, like you rightly said, and I hope you are going to give me immunity. I don't want anyone to come and, harass me after what I'm going to say, but it's probably common knowledge, so I would say it all the same. Communities collect levies, and there is one video at the moment that has gone viral where a young man is advocating for communities to donate money. And what's that money going to be used for, Olajumoke? Two things. That money is going to be used to buy weapons, and secondly, to buy influence. Whenever any member of that community is arrested, it is that money that will be used to, quote and unquote, bribe a public security official to release the member of that community that has been arrested. So sadly, this issue has become institutionalized within our system, where influence and bribery stops or prevents the criminal justice system from punishing offenders. And with the tacit involvement of most members of our communities, sometimes political leaders, sometimes religious leaders, sometimes economic leaders, sometimes name them, anyone, as long as you're a member of that community, you would use your influence in this instance. So point I'm trying to make is, yes, the governor may be correct, but the governor should have an open mind to realize that it is not specific to banditry. It is the reality of our system today that the criminal justice system has failed. And it is the same in Plateau State, like it is in Zamfara State, like it is in Oyo State, or in Delta State, or in Enugu State. So it's cuts across the entire country. It's not specific to Plateau State.
All right, a great way to end this conversation. But above all, the president has made a promise. He has promised to keep the country safe, and we're hopeful that he keeps to this commitment, because this is the responsibility of governments. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Dr. Kabir Adamu, Managing Director, Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And I believe there is hope. I believe that with the right steps, just like I've listed them, we can turn this tide to where we see an improvement in public security.
Amen. We're hopeful. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching, everyone. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But before we go, let's tell you that the views and reactions of our resource persons are theirs and have no connection with TVC News. Meanwhile, you can watch the repeat broadcast of this episode at midnight. Get in touch with us on our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, and X at TVC News NG and at Olajumoke using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News NG. I am Olajumoke Olatuji. I'll see you again tomorrow.
It's another season
That
of
is starting
Cowbell
already.
Media.
All right, Toby, your 60 seconds of fame starts now. How many lines of symmetry has a rectangle? Two. Correct. Simplify 6p cubed multiplied by p squared divided by 3p4.
2p.
Correct.
Don't miss a single moment of the action in the Cowbellpedia Mega Minds 2025 edition.
Catch me, your quiz master, Ebuka.
And I'm your host, Linda.
Tune in to Cowbellpedia Mega Minds.
The following is a paid presentation by ShopX TV.
Do you love the taste of fried food, but you know it's packed with extra calories and unhealthy fats? Spending hours in the kitchen only to end up with burnt or undercooked meals? Feeling frustrated and greasy? Introducing the Cook X 10-in-1 Air Fryer Oven. A powerful 12-liter oven that provides 75% more cooking space than the traditional air fryers. Stay tuned to learn about the amazing free bonus items included with the CookX Air Fryer Oven. Say goodbye to greasy, unhealthy food and hello to nutritious, delicious meals. The CookX Air Fryer Oven is a 12-liter powerhouse that can fit a whole chicken and feed the entire family. Using hot air circulation, it cooks food to crispy perfection with up to 80% less fat than traditional fryers, requiring little to no oil. Fry food using superheated air, giving you that irresistible crispy texture without the excess fat and calories. The CookX air fryer oven replaces a deep fryer, a rotisserie oven, a dehydrator, a conventional oven, a toaster oven, a pizza grill, a microwave. It's a chef-quality, all-in-one kitchen machine, featuring a state-of-art touchscreen with 10 preset functions.
I am happy, my husband is happy, and of course I have a happy home. From my grilling on check, to my frying on check, to my baking on check.
This CookX air fryer oven is the bomb. It is super fast, small time, everything all set.
The CookX air fryer oven is now available exclusively on ShopX TV. For a limited time, we're offering an exclusive flash sale with up to 40% off. Call now and get the CookX